You can have my toys when I'm gone. Colin Smith died 1990, aged 7. You don't know what's in it. Bob Threakall died 1991, aged 47. We've been given a life sentence without parole, while those who are responsible have continued their high-flying careers. Gary Kelly died 2008. What they're hoping for is that we'll all get picked off one by one, and eventually there will be no one left to answer to. Charles Loader died 2009, aged 43. It is not an act of Parliament that is needed, but an act of political will. Hayden Lewis died 2010, aged 53. Life's a bitch, and then you die. Gareth Lewis died 2010, aged 52. You can't get worse off than dead. Mike Dorricott died 2015, aged 47. I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. All those moments will be lost in time, like tears in rain. Time to die. From the bedroom wall of Darren Flack, died 2016, aged 47. They really have treated so many with little concern or respect. It seems to me they make up the rules as they go along. Paul Hooper died 2017, aged 53. I'd like them to never enjoy a night's sleep ever again for what they did. Steve Diamond died 2018, aged 62. Thank you.
And we're going to end with Bob himself.
Yeah.
Could you play the video, please, Paul?
They gave me something which I thought would cure haemophilia, and it did. But unfortunately, it also introduced HIV. And my initial reactions were, good God, they've killed me.
But Bob and his wife Sue aren't amongst the 600 infected haemophiliacs suing the government and local health authorities for not screening Factor 8. Because they both work, they earn too much to qualify for legal aid.
If we want to sue for compensation, we have to fund that ourselves. Now, we're not talking £10 or £50, we're talking over £2,000 or £3,000 here. And it could well be more if it goes into a protracted court case, which there's every indication it will. And we just can't afford that. I would personally like to see it so I could actually sue for compensation. I'm not asking for a guarantee that we would win. I would just like the right, the privilege, if you like, to actually fight the case in the first place and prove that we're right, that, you know, it is their fault and therefore they should pay. You can't plan the way I used to plan for a future. You can't rely on things like insurance to provide for children because I just can't get insurance. That sort of thing's all gone. It's just a daily basis now that I live. There is no future. In '85, I was called into the hospital and told that a test had shown that I was positive HIV, AIDS, as I think they called it then. And that was it, basically. There wasn't much else they could tell me at the time. And initially, it didn't really mean an awful lot. It was only later when we began to find out exactly what HIV/AIDS was, the implications of it. The fact that it had, in effect, shortened my life from normal to maybe 5 or 6 years at the most. You know, that was absolutely devastating. Absolutely devastating.
Whose product were you taking? Whose Factor 8 was it?
My records showed that I was given Armour Factor 8.
These are Bob's medical records, with the date of every treatment and the batch numbers which show the Factor 8 that gave him AIDS was made by Armour.
These people had a choice. I wasn't given a choice. I wasn't told what the choice was. You know, you can take factor 8, but it may lead to. Or you can go back to the old system and have your bed rest, which was painful, but it didn't give me HIV.
If we were to tell you that the company and others knew there was a problem, a serious problem, and had connived together, I think that's the right word, to institute delaying tactics till they got their house in order, how would you feel about that?
I'd be absolutely appalled, because, I mean, what they've done now is sentence people like me to death by delaying whatever they delayed, tests or whatever it was. You know, I'd be outraged. It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, they've obviously taken many, many thousands of people's lives in their hands purely for financial gain. You know, I think it's totally immoral.
We showed Bob the documents which proved that the blood companies, led by Armour, had indeed used delaying tactics to avoid testing and to carry on selling.
Well, words fail me. It's absolutely diabolical that they put presumably profit before my life.
Yeah, they were sitting around the table quibbling about money while we were injecting Bob with live AIDS virus.
Yeah, which they knew about.
And which they provided. Yeah, it's inhuman.
It's absolutely appalling that they should even contemplate doing something like that. It really is. And do they know what they've done?
How long do you think you have left to live?
That's the hardest thing to cope with, actually, because I'm not sure how long I've got. I've lost nearly 2 stone in weight over the past 12 months. And should that continue, then obviously I've only got perhaps another year or so to go. Hard to speculate. A year, 2 years.
Who do you blame for all this?
I've got to blame the government. It's got to be their fault. There can be nobody else that I can blame. They were the ones that, through the health service, gave me this factor 8, which would purported to do me good. And in fact, it's done me nothing but harm at the end of the day.
Mr. Budgeon, didn't the haemophiliacs have the right to expect that blood that was given out by the Department of Health was clean, that it had been tested?
Well, I don't know about the right. Of course, they hoped that it was clean, and indeed the government hoped that it was clean. What has to be proved is that the National Health Service was negligent.
In the suburbs of Birmingham, nobody in the Threakall household ever dreamt they could be affected by AIDS. But Bob Threakall was a haemophiliac. Until they found out that Bob had become HIV positive, the Threakalls regarded themselves as a perfectly ordinary family. They had learned to cope with Bob's haemophilia, but now they faced another and more terrible misfortune.
I suppose it hasn't all been bad luck, really. I mean, it was something which should never have happened. I actually first met Bob when I had a holiday job at his office, and I didn't know him very well at all. I just used to see him in the canteen and thought he was quite nice, you know, quite pleasant. But it was some years before we really got to know each other, when my sister actually started going out with his best friend, and we started going out as a foursome. And then he became best man at my sister's wedding. I was chief bridesmaid, and then the inevitable happened, you know, just like the stories. And we got married and decided we wanted to start a family fairly soon, and had our little boy a couple of years after we got married.
83 was the date I was actually diagnosed HIV positive, in the sense that that's when I contacted it. But I wasn't told till 85, when I had a blood test which the hospital confirmed was HIV. At that time, they couldn't really explain what would happen. The papers picked it up very quickly, and they were talking dramatically in terms of 2 years to 5 years life, and that was it. You know, you die from fungal pneumonia or whatever.
We knew he'd had a blood test at his normal clinic appointment a few weeks beforehand, and that he was going on this particular morning for the result. And he actually came and picked me up at work for lunch. And I remember we were sitting on the car park, actually, when he told me. And he actually said, oh, yes, the test was positive. They don't really know what it means. They think that a very few people will go down with this disease called AIDS, but that I'll probably be all right. But they said that we're to use protected sex, and we're not to have a baby for 2 years. And that was the whole extent of the advice we were offered at the time. It wouldn't happen with any other disease. You know, if you get cancer or MS or something like that, people have every sympathy, and, you know, they're all rallying around and fundraising and all the rest of it. But because it's got sexual connotations, you know, people, their attitudes change. I mean, if it's something like gonorrhea or syphilis, I suppose you can go up to the special clinic and get sorted out and no one need ever know. But, you know, with this, there comes a point when you can't hide it away any longer, although people try to. We know of people who are absolutely terrified that people will find out. You know, men who are one of, say, 5 or 6 brothers, and they're all haemophiliacs, and they don't know who's positive and who's negative. They won't even talk to their brothers and sisters about it. They won't tell their parents. They don't want their neighbours to know. And it just simply would not happen with any other disease, any other illness.
The last 3 months, 4 months, I haven't been able to go to work. A lot of it lately is to do with the cold. That's basically because of weight loss. I'm very glad that Sue's here because there isn't a lot I can actually do without sort of making myself breathless and that sort of thing. I occupy myself by doing jigsaws and reading and watching the television and listening to the cassettes and many things like that. But you haven't got the satisfaction of actually going to work.
Bob Threakall was admitted to hospital on the 17th of February this year. He died 3 days later.
Thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
Sue, thank you very much. As perhaps befits a former teacher, you've used your words to paint very vivid pictures. First, the first part of what you were saying, picture of the human being that Bob was. And in the second part, how you described your struggles that came in the aftermath of what we've just seen, was his death in '91. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.